every message you sent me, I got more and more pumped about what's going to happen.
Yeah, I wish I hadn't sent anything now. or I downplayed it a bit would have probably been the smarter move here.
Hey there, English teachers. Welcome to another very special episode of the More Than English podcast. I am your host, Jesse, and I want to help you in the classroom. And boy, am I excited for today's episode. And one of the ways that I like to help you in the classroom is to invite some of the top teachers and top guests that I know in a specific area to give you lesson ideas, training, game ideas, philosophy, teaching philosophy and methodology to help you be more comfortable and confident in the classroom and ultimately help you enjoy your job better, right? And if you are teaching in Europe, especially in Spain, guaranteed you're preparing somebody for a Cambridge exam. And Cambridge exams, they're not always the most fun classes to do. They're not always the most exciting for the students. They aren't looking forward to it hardly ever. But it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be that way at all. And you can use the Cambridge exam, use the Cambridge practice for something so much more than just Cambridge practice, but actually to improve their English, right? Isn't that the point? And before we get into today's guest, let me just give you a reminder that if you are watching this on YouTube, then there are audio versions of this on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Google Store, Android, anywhere where you get podcasts, you can download it and listen to it with no data use. And if you are listening to the audio format, then hop on over to youtube.com/Sweed Academy and get the video format. Both formats have a little different style, a little different flair. On the audio format, I do a different style intro and a different style closing. And in the video format, you get notes to look at on the screen and just, visuals. But without any further ado, let's get into today's guest right now. Let me introduce today's guest, and his name is Terry Lodge. Who is Terry Lodge, you might think? And let me tell you about Terry. He has been teaching English in Seville, Spain since 2008. So quite the experienced teacher. He is CELTA trained, which if you are just starting your English teaching career and you're wondering if you should get certified and what certification you should get, if you're just looking for the paper to put on your CV, any old TEFL certificate will do. But if you are looking for genuine job training, the CELTA is, quite frankly, the best that I found out there and the most widely recognized. And he is CELTA trained. So am I, by the way. And he's also a Delta trainee. And I will ask him about the Delta. And the Delta is pretty much, if the CELTA is a bachelor's degree, the Delta is a master's degree. And we're going to get into more specifics about what the Delta program involves. But I do know it's in-depth and powerful. And he's also a teacher and teacher trainer, which you will see in today's episode why that is. And we're going to get a lot of teacher training today. And he's a Cambridge exam coordinator and an examiner for the B1, B2, and C1 exams. So this is great because we're going to get a view from the other side. And that's always good because we're going to get to share with the students what examiners are looking for, what they notice, how we can help the students be less nervous, how we can help them be more prepared. And that will ultimately be more beneficial for the students. But without any further ado, let's introduce Terry. What's up, man?
Hey, Jesse. Happy to be here. How
Thank
you doing?
you. Good. How'd I do with your intro? Did I miss anything that
Very
you'd like
nice.
to add?
I would add actually, the year after I did the CELTA, I actually did the young learners. I went back to the same place, to International House, and I did the young learners, which I also highly recommend, regardless of if you're going to be coming across young kids or even young teens. Really, it's really beneficial. There is a difference because CELTA is essentially teaching to adults.
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
that's what
it's actually in the name, isn't it? That's
yes,
what the A is.
Certificate of English Language Teaching to Adults, exactly.
Yeah.
But the young learners is a shorter course. It's shorter. It's 1 week, and I think it's really, really worth doing. I got a lot out of that as well, just because the pedagogy of it is different. I mean, as we know, kids don't have the same analytical mind that. Well, today's conversation point, the exams is the kind of mind that you need to do these kind of exams. But I still think, as a side note, it's worth doing. Yeah.
It is. I bet it is. I remember when I did my CELTA course, they did talk about that. And I maybe should have, maybe I'll go back and do that.
It was
because
fascinating.
The CELTA was so useful for teaching adults. I imagine the young learners too.
Yeah, yeah.
So what, did you do that, by the way, in Click in Sevilla?
Yes, I did. I'm doing everything through Click.
Nice.
Because and it's nice because the CELTA teacher that I had like 11, 12 years ago is the same person that's been seeing me through the Delta at the moment. So it's
nice. Is that Mike?
It's the same. Claire Potter.
Okay, nice.
Potsy, as I call her now. It's been so I can be quite informal at this stage, you know.
Sure.
But Mike is also an absolute legend in my CELTA. He's like a god, that guy, for me, because he's just so and he reminds me, just keep it calm, just keep calm.
He is the epitome of calm, isn't he?
It's just teaching, you know, and that's he's taught me that from day dot, you know. So I'm really grateful. Sometimes it is more, I think, with teaching. It's not just about knowing your P's and your Q's, knowing your grammar and stuff. It's a lot of it is the temperament and how you actually approach things from a psychological point of view for yourself.
In fact, most of it is not just the data, because if it were, they could just look in a book. Right?
Exactly.
Teaching is the personal touch.
Absolutely, yeah. We'll talk a little bit about that today. I wanted to delve a little bit into that today, actually.
Awesome.
Well.
Perfect. So, well, let's get into that now. Let's get into, you mean the Delta?
Well, we could talk about Delta if you want.
Okay.
Yes. Well, I mean, the first thing
because I had thought about taking the Delta before. Yeah. I actually, when I went in to apply, funny story, I went in and to apply for the Delta, and I interviewed with Mike. And he was very straightforward. He's like, you know, with the experience I had with with the type of experience that I had and the certifications that I had just an online TEFL that was just 1 month. You just go through the motions, essentially.
Oh, okay.
Right. Let's face it. That's what many of the online TEFL courses are, which is
I haven't
great
seen
for
them,
your CV.
Actually.
No, yeah. I did one, and in theory they're okay, but there's no real practical training. And he just told me, he's like, let me be honest with you. If you take the Delta now, I don't think you'll pass. And I'm like, okay. And I understood that because I knew what my online TEFL degree was. Yeah, but he did tell me that I'd be perfect for the CELTA with the practical training. And boy, was he spot on. The CELTA was exactly what I needed.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely invaluable. It's a killer when you're doing it. It consumes your life.
It does for those 4 weeks.
Yeah, as does the Delta for a much longer period of time. But in each case, it's really rewarding. That's the thing. If you really are passionate about teaching, I highly recommend doing the Delta. It's divided into 3 modules. And the first module, which is what I'm on at the moment, is really about the terminology, and you learn about how textbooks are put together. And the cognitive link between the different activities, how they lead into each other, and how sort of parts of the brain are activated and language is produced. And it's just, I really understand books in a way I didn't understand them before, textbooks. I know why an activity has been put there. Why have they done this before this and then this afterwards?
So they're not just thrown together like speaking, listening, reading.
No, you'd think there's a lot of thought gone into it. and it's really comes down to science almost. It's very scientific in how the human brain perceives and processes, recalls and retrieves information. And that, again, for me is very interesting because I'm learning about how our brain works, and that kind of side of it I find really interesting personally.
Me too.
But
Do you have like an example, like a quick example? I know I'm putting you on the spot. And examples are always hard for me to come up with in class, even in English lessons.
On a Sunday morning as well, yeah. Thanks.
On a Sunday.
So let's just say, oh God, I honestly can't think of something.
Yeah, sorry.
Actually, if I grab a textbook, let me grab a textbook here.
Okay, good idea.
Grab a book, then I can actually see something and make an example.
Yeah, and while you're looking for that, I'll just share like about general textbooks. So, it does just look like it's grammar and then writing part and then speaking part. And they just kind of like alternate, and that's all. But there is kind of a general structure that they follow. And most books kind of follow a similar structure. Yeah. And they're not just thrown willy-nilly. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So like comparatives and superlatives are all kind of like in the same time of the year.
Well, I mean, if I give you the base example, like why it might seem simple to me and even to you actually, but it's a case of like, why will they put a picture at the beginning of a unit typically, and they'll look at and they'll say, talk about the picture, talk about that picture, and why is that? Well, it's to activate, as they say, activate schemata. The idea is to get the students thinking about the topic and to get the vocabulary and possibly the grammar to the forefront of their minds, rather than just say, okay, today we're doing past simple, here's the past simple exercise. Instead, we start off with a picture. Have you visited any of these places? When did you go? What did you think about it? So they don't realize really that it's about talking about past tense. They think that it's just about their own personal experiences. And it's one of the things I think about TEFL as well. So when we do the CELTA, the methodology is very much about personalizing it and making it about them. And that's why we tend to lead in, I don't know about you, but Mike taught me, lead with a story about yourself. And I still remember a story he told me about a guitar that had a scratch on it. I don't know if when you did the CELTA, if he was your trainer, he told you that story.
No, my trainer was Ian.
Oh, okay.
Which was also a top-notch trainer.
Yeah, they're all great. Yeah. But he told me this story about a guitar that he had, and it had been lost in a house fire. I mean, that was 12 years ago. I still remember that story because it was interesting. The story was interesting, And
personal anecdotes are always so interesting, right? I've used those I've come to learn to use those in class since the CELTA, because Ian said told a story about a bracelet in his grandmother's, in a box in his grandmother's room that was very special to him. But you remember those sorts of things.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I think also that it's a case of like Jessica said, I think it was Jessica who said it on her video, where she's saying the kids, they're playing games. All they do, they think they're just playing games, and they go home and the parents say, "What have you been doing?" "We've been playing games." And this sort of that look of horror. I know that feeling. But I could honestly say the same with my teens and my adults, could say the same thing, that they've spent the class playing different games, because I'm all about that, dressing it up. They don't know that they're actually learning something. And that's what the books attempt to do. But they can only go so far, because obviously they've got to have those exercises and things in there. So I think often if you look at a book as a teacher, and especially as a new teacher, and you're kind of thinking, but I don't understand why that's there versus why that's there, I would suggest you look at the teacher's book, because one of the things that in the Delta that you have to basically be able to do is essentially, without a teacher's book, write out the lesson plan or explain why activities are running in a sequence. Teachers' books are a great source of learning. I kind of tended not to use them because I'm a bit maverick. I still don't always, but I will breeze through them, because if I'm not sure about why something is there, I want to know why. And to be quite honest, with all types of books, all different, Pearson, Longman, Cambridge, I've found that they are actually very informative. And they can be very useful as a training tool, surprisingly, I've discovered. Doing the Delta has taught me that.
Interesting.
Yes, I've actually gone back
to using them.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I don't use them to plan per se, but I do go through them to think, oh,
as a
okay,
reference.
yeah, definitely. I
Yeah.
really do recommend it. Yeah.
I will start doing that because I'm kind of like you said, a bit of a maverick. I like how you said that. Like I like to come up with my own ideas, and the teacher's book, it kind of seems like it's very, I guess how they would say in Spanish, like heavy. And
Yeah, yeah. Yes,
but
yeah, it is, and and it just feels too formulaic always, doesn't it? It just
yeah,
feels very kind of restricted, and I thought, no, no, no. Where's the love? Where's the passion in this? Yes,
exactly.
it's there. It's very organized, but there's no passion in it. But that's where we come in. That's
That's
where our
where the art comes
personalities.
in,
Yeah,
essentially. I title a
absolutely.
lot of these "The Art of Teaching," blah blah blah, and
Yeah,
that it really is, right, because our part isn't really the science part, the 1 2 3 ABC. It's kind of like to add the color, make the students interested, and bring it
absolutely.
to life.
That's it. We're the facilitators, as I've often referred to myself as more of a facilitator than an actual teacher. In many ways, because we are
Absolutely.
just facilitating information. I mean, I'm not. You know, a lot of the learning is done by the students, and yourself, a lot of our methodology is about putting the onus on the students quite often, rather than us, reducing teacher talk time, that kind of thing,
Yeah,
which
absolutely.
is
One thing,
something I do have to work on. That still, actually, I do
yeah,
tend to talk a bit too much sometimes, I think.
I think it's a continual battle, right?
Yeah,
Something that stuck with me that Ian kept saying was, imagine you should be able to deliver this lesson if you lost your voice.
yeah,
That's something
yeah,
he kept like, how would you deliver this lesson? How would you do it if you lost your voice? And that's something that's always stuck with me.
yeah. Yeah, I like that, and it's the same as well. I think another thing to add to that, as we hurtle on ever more into the 21st century, is could you walk in and do this and teach the same things, have the same result, the same aim and objective achieved at the end if you just had a piece of chalk and a blackboard?
Hmm.
Because I always prepare PowerPoints and things like this. I'll be doing that after this. My Sundays are spent preparing all of my things, because then I can sleep at night. I know my lessons are planned, and I'm happy with them. But I'm always conscious of the fact, traveling around to colegios, various things, that the stuff doesn't work. Technology fails. We're a long way from it being perfect. So I always ask myself, could I do this? Could I still teach something with just a piece of chalk and a blackboard?
That's
And
very good, useful advice too, because like you said, sometimes technology, it just fails. And if you have your entire thing built around like website, online resource, and
yeah,
then
yeah,
PowerPoint, and then maybe YouTube, and then, the Wi-Fi is down, or, we're not allowed to use this classroom's computer, or, anything
yeah,
happens, like then you're kind of like,
yeah. And I mean, you must have been there. You must have been there before.
oh
It's
yeah,
happened to me in the past, and I was actually trying to do a lesson about the Watergate
okay.
scandal, which is kind of ironic with things happening in the world right now. But I was trying to do a lesson about that, and I poured my heart and soul into it. Really had. It was my first year teaching as well.
Mm.
And everything failed. I had these beautiful video clips. I can't remember the name of that great film. There's a really good film based on it.
Nixon?
Yeah. But it's not Frost versus Nixon. Anyway,
But it's
I
not
don't.
just called Nixon?
No, I don't think so. I can't remember. It was over a decade ago.
There
But
are a
yeah,
few
it
of
just
those.
failed, and I just remember sweating profusely, and just feeling the heat. And it was horrible. It was a horrible feeling. And I told myself that is never going to happen again, because I had to abandon the lesson. Essentially, I didn't know how to carry on, because I based it so heavily on technology that I had to use it. So as much as I adore technology, I know that I have to sort of approach it at arm's length to a certain degree, because you have to be prepared,
Yeah.
to
Was that
go
in
in.
front of adults too?
Yeah, that was. Yeah, it was a group of adults. It was my first year, so it was even worse. My first academy. I really didn't want to, make any mistakes, but it was a good learning experience, like all of these horrific teaching experiences. And I just said, look, we're going to abandon this and do something else. And I think that's another another thing as teachers. Know when to abandon something, and don't be ashamed to do it either. Actually, I have absolutely no shame in saying, do you know what, I don't think this activity is working. You're not really enjoying this, are you? And just sort of be honest with your students, and just say to them, this isn't working. I think, should we do something else? Yeah, do something else. Yeah. No, I agree. I don't think that worked very well. And I tell them through the process. I talk them through the process. I say, I thought this would be a great idea. I thought maybe we could do that. But in reality, no, I think this is too difficult, or it's not really very fun, or it's too complicated, isn't it? And that's fine. And I don't feel shame. I don't feel bad. I just think that didn't work. I'm not perfect,
That is such great advice. And that's exactly the kind of thing that I want to share with like younger teachers too, that like, it's okay. Show your human side,
Absolutely. That is honestly I would say the secret to my personal success is exactly that. Yeah.
Exactly. Like things happen. We have ideas we think will be great, and they turn out, oops, this it just falls flat, or the art of saying, I don't know. Like that's
yes. Yeah. And
like,
the art
how
of
do you use whom? How do you use whom in a sentence? You know what?
That's
Let's
great
look
question.
that up together.
Yeah. Well, let's find out. Or that kind of thing. When that happens, I always I open it up to the class.
Absolutely.
And if they don't know, and I think it's worthwhile, something like whom is a great example. Actually, I would then say to them, okay, you've got 5 minutes. Let's see who can come up with the best definition. Go. And I'll allow them to use their phones, for example.
Oh, that's great.
Let them go on. Let them search it up, because also it's saying to them, hey, if you don't know something, look it up.
Teaching them how to research.
Why not? I mean, like I said, with technology, I am very, very pro technology. You'll see a couple of references to it today. I really think this is the world we live in. As much as I've just said that we can't rely on it, kids, everybody's got phones, kids, adults, everybody has phones. Why are we not using them? So that's a good example when a question like that comes up, where everybody can get involved. And especially if none of them know the answer, then it's beneficial to everybody.
Yeah. And that's better. Like, even then, like normally I'll just like Google it, on the board, but even getting them to research it for themselves, that's even better, because it's teaching them how to search things.
Yeah, autonomy is key, and that when it comes to exams, it's absolutely key. And I think it was Harry was saying when he was doing his Spanish B2, your guest last week or the week before, doing the Delta was a great exercise in remembering what it's like to be a student again. And it helped me again to be relatable to my students, especially with my exam teaching. It helped me reconnect again and remember just how blooming difficult it is. And it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter how experienced or how much you think you're in that class because you need to pass a certain bar. So I found that to be very useful on a level of I can relate to my students even more now, because this is hell.
It's
enjoyable, but still hellish.
It is hellish. Hellish-ish is a nice way to make something an adjective. And it's a whole different world, right? Being in a class, being on that side of the classroom and this side of the classroom. And I said it to Luke Kim, which a few weeks ago, about if I had about being a language student. If I had an academy, I think I'd probably make it mandatory. And it might be during some teaching hours or something, but to have the teachers take the local language class. So if you're in
absolutely,
just to get that immersion. You think so too?
I 100% accredit that to, again, part of my success, 100%. Because before I was, a little interesting tidbit, before I was an English teacher, when I first arrived in Seville, I was a chef. So I worked in a restaurant literally around the corner from our school, and I learnt Spanish there, and I used that money to pay for my CELTA, the money that I earned in the restaurant. I worked there for 2 years. I moved there in 2006, and I basically worked my way through, and it was great. And I learnt about the local culture, I learnt the language, I learnt everything, and I learnt to cook Spanish, which was great. And it really helps in the classroom. Again, when it comes to rapport, if you take the time to get to know and integrate yourself into the local culture, it makes a huge difference. It makes my planning really fun. I mean, do you know who, Belen Esteban, do you know who she is?
No.
You're a very lucky person. She's a TV personality, that's on these chat shows, here where they shout a lot.
One of those.
Yeah. So I basically sometimes I use her image in certain slides and put speech bubbles, and the students just sort of, they see it and they're just, everyone's laughing their heads off because it's like, what's she doing? Yes, I know who she is, and it kind of it's nice. I think it's nice for them to see something that's really personal.
Using their culture, not just because I think a lot of the times as teachers we can kind of press too much like our culture. We're bringing our culture into this, which relate to them. You show them that you're learning their culture and it's more personal to them.
And it helps you learn like the slang and things like that. I was talking with some people just yesterday and we were comparing like different types of slang. And because I've learned the local language, and what Andalus is like, the Andalus dialect here, they've got lots of very fun, interesting expressions. So I always have many great conversations because I've learned the language and I understand the culture here. It's made it a lot easier for me to find funny observations, and I have a great time talking about the language here with just random people I meet. They're very interested in slang words, and that's the kind of stuff that in exams, if they understand slang terminology, colloquial idioms, things like that, that's the kind of stuff that we love. So I think it's beneficial. Again, it's something that translates into the classroom and the way that you teach. And I often tell people, oh yes, we say this, we say that in English. This is how you say this. But in the south of England, around London area, they would say this, and in the north they would say that. The same way you say this, the same way that you say deal. We might say man. We might say man.
Or Americans might say dude or man, or in England,
the south
mate.
you might say fella, mate, or fella. In the south. Fella.
Okay.
So it's my more southern England accent coming out there. My accent when I'm with my family is a bit different. It's not exactly like this. I'm a bit looser, a bit more like that. Yeah,
I'd imagine.
I'm from the south, so
that
London way. Yeah. So.
That's the same as everybody, right? We go back home and it's kind of like we kind of transform. Our mouth kind of transforms a little bit, and I start instead of saying water, I say like water. Things
water.
Like that. Or for you, water. Right?
Water. I have one or two students with my higher level students. I do make a conscious effort to speak more as I would in England, because at that stage they know the language. And the amount of times I've heard students who are, and I'm talking C1 level students who've told me that they've gone to London, they've come back and they've been kind of disappointed. And when I've asked them why, they said it's because they felt that they weren't able to understand. They said, oh, I understand you in the classroom and I understand the things that we do there, but in the real life, I'm not able to understand people. And I've thought about that and I've pondered over it, and I've kind of, with listening particularly, I've done sessions on it and researched. There was a US military spent a lot of money on research into listening and retrieval of information, retention, and they spent millions. It was a very long dossier that I read to try and get to the bottom of it. And do I have any hard and fast solutions? No, but there are ways we can make it better, which we will again look at today. But it's difficult for them. But like anything, practice makes perfect. That's the underlying thing here. For all the advice that we can all give, it does come down to, you've got to be persistent, you've got to practice. And again, from my Delta, I realized that just spending a few hours on a Monday and then a Wednesday and then a Friday isn't going to be good enough. Really, I needed to be on that every day. So my bedtime reading has gone from The Guardian to Delta terminology. I had to change my habits and just put it in almost as a habit. And I realized that's what I've been telling my students. Why am I not doing it?
That's exactly it. That's something
I think Harry said something the other day about that as well. I think, yeah.
Like, yeah, probably making it become a part, like encouraging them. It's not just classroom activities. And if you want, I have a worksheet. It's like a checklist that I give to my students. Well, the more advanced ones who want it, just like tasks to do, because sometimes it can be hard. Like, what do I do? Just search on YouTube. I've done that. I'm like, I want to listen to something on YouTube in Spanish, but I don't know what to search, right? So like a list of common nice YouTube channels that I like. And by the way, infographics, biographics, like we talked about. And just giving them a checklist of things to do and little tasks to do with these. I can let you see it if you want.
That would be great. Cool. That would be
just
awesome.
To get that regular practice, to have it become, a part of their routine.
Yeah.
Right. Because that's how we learn anything.
Yeah. Exactly. Part of a routine. That's the thing. It shouldn't be seen as homework, really.
Yeah.
Homework shouldn't be seen as homework, especially when it comes to adults anyway. I mean, we're not expecting children to be doing things like this. They're kids. But adults, absolutely, it should be a routine for them. The same as getting up in the morning and brushing your teeth. It's a case of, okay, I'm going to do this. And in fact, it was just Friday, I had a class and I was speaking to, it's a new client of mine, a private student, and she's a lawyer. And I have a few lawyers, actually, that I work with. And they often tell me they work crazy hours. They're not generally people who are up on pop culture and such.
Where's she a lawyer? Sorry to interrupt. Where's she a lawyer for? Where does she work for?
I can't remember the name. I can never remember that. KPMG.
Okay, because I teach some lawyers at Garrigues.
Garrigues, yeah. Oh, I used to. I'm still friends. She's actually ex-Garrigues.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. I will have to talk about that, and not now, obviously. But I know a lot of them. No, you'll have to say Terry said hi because I love those guys. They're really, really nice guys.
Yeah.
But then the hours that they work. How hard those guys work, really.
Yeah.
And it can be very difficult sometimes to find. I'll say, I'll reference something in pop culture, something. Maybe I was going to say Madonna. They would know who she is, but like a famous film. I asked somebody one of them last year, I think at Garrigues, have you seen Jurassic Park? I haven't seen it. You haven't seen Jurassic Park? It's my favorite film. So anyone who hasn't seen it, it just horrifies me.
That's how I feel about Breaking Bad.
Oh yeah, well yeah. It's like but that's for us. I feel like that's for us teachers. Breaking Bad. It's like let that be a lesson. Treat your teachers well, or else this is how it could.
All right.
This is what you could drive us to. You don't treat us right. But yeah, so I couldn't find anything. In the end, I managed to get out of her. She said, well, I read Hola magazine.
You read what magazine? She reads
Hola.
What magazine?
Hola magazine.
Oh, okay.
I said,
Spanish
well, okay then. Yeah, I said, well then read Hello. If you like celebrity news and gossip, just read the English version of it.
There you go.
So you have to dig a little bit.
Great
sometimes.
Suggestion.
You have to dig. But sometimes, everybody, sorry, you were saying, continue.
No. I was just backing up what you said. Sometimes you have to do that. Just give them an idea that kind of seems obvious, but it's not so obvious until you bring it up. Like, well, read the English version, or you like to watch Spanish speeches, public speeches. Well, watch TED. That might be a basic example because everybody knows TED Talks, but something simple like that. I love that.
Yeah, no, because but with some people you have to find a kind of you have to really dig to find something. And I think with professionals, because I've worked with doctors as well, and I find with these high level professionals particularly, sometimes they're studying. I have a C2 student at the moment, and she's awesome, really great student. I've had her for like a year and a half or so, and she's looking to take the C2 in July of next year, and she really has no time. She's like the CEO of a company. She really does not have time to read, study anything. But I kind of slowly but surely got to know her personality a little bit and managed to find a series that she loves, Gossip Girl of all things. Something I've never actually watched it, but I sort of thought she might enjoy that, and she loves it. So she's now watching that in English. So yeah, perfect. You have to dig a little bit, and you do have to take the time to invest in the student and find out, because everybody likes something, and if you want them to do well in these exams, they need to be doing extra work outside. They need to be receiving English. They need to be receiving English. And I also think that we need to be telling students, look, every time you're at home and you decide to watch something in English or read something in English, it doesn't need to be a task. Watch something because you want to watch it, not because I need to improve my English. That's not the way. That from my own experience, again, I learned Spanish working in the restaurant. I did have a few lessons, actual proper lessons, but I essentially learned because I needed to. I wanted to converse, and I noticed things just started to go in. One day I remember saying, "Me voy arriba para cambiar mi ropa y me voy para casa." Ah! And we were like, and me and the kitchen staff were all jumping around. Everybody was really happy because it's like I just said my first complete phrase in Spanish. And I was like, oh wow, I've kind of put that together because I've heard things, and then things stick. So I always say, even if you think nothing's going in, it is. It is. If you start to feel tired and you're like, oh, my brain, I can't. Why is that? It's because your brain's working. Your brain's working hard. That means it's happening.
Yeah.
You're processing information. That's why you're feeling tired of it. Good.
Good.
You know,
That's a good sign, right?
Yes. Tell them that's good. If you're tired, that's good. Why do we feel tired? Because we're working hard.
Yeah. And
Just
thinking really burns a lot of calories.
Absolutely,
burns a lot of energy.
Absolutely.
I shared with an adult, a working professional private student the other day. And she's like, oh, I can never get the gerund and infinitive. Like, what are the rules? And I'm like, don't waste your time looking at the rules, because there are more exceptions than rules. It's a whole page. Just try using it. If it's correct, what feels right. If it's correct, great. If it's not, I'll correct you. And I told her it's kind of like, creating Leonardo da Vinci creating David. That was Da Vinci, right? I don't want to make myself sound like an idiot. But every
Michelangelo
or Michelangelo David. I said Michelangelo let that be known. I said Michelangelo to her because she's like, with my accent, I was like, Miguel Angel, and so, I was like, every chisel, hit, like that doesn't make a bit of difference, like a single chisel hit, but after a while, look at what you get. And that's kind of like what learning little by little a language does. But I could talk about, language learning philosophy and teaching philosophy all day with you, obviously. But you did have a lot prepared. So
I've got some bits and pieces I hope will be of use. Yeah, just little things that over the years have sort of served me well, and things to remember, and just things to keep in mind, and a couple of ideas for activities as well.
Awesome.
So I guess we can. We'll start.
What do you have? You said you have. Yeah, perfect.
So first of all, I wanted. Sorry, please.
No, you go right ahead. I was gonna, ask you about this. So go ahead.
Well, first of all, with speaking with confidence, the first thing I do is have my students speaking. This week they were speaking. I kind of put them on the spot straight away. Now, some people might say that's not a good way to start a class. I think if you're confident that you can build rapport, if you're a fairly open person, which I am, I would say, I wasn't too worried about it. The reason being is it's just a little welcome to the exam experience. And so when they come in, I'm making them speak straight away. And some of them are quite nervous about it. And I'll stop them after about 30 seconds. It's very short. And I say, you see that? That's that feeling. How are you feeling? How are you feeling? First thing, how are you feeling? Oh, I don't know. And many of them, I haven't spoken English for a long time. This is, it's the adults particularly. Teenagers are a bit more forthcoming in this area, but adults absolutely can be quite a terrifying first 30 seconds for them. But I tell them that feeling is going to get better, but that's how you feel right now, and that's what it's going to be like on the day. And I'm here to help facilitate your learning so that you don't feel that way come the day of the exam. So straight away, I think it's important to let them know what they're in for. However, speaking with confidence, I think, is one of the things that can be really difficult for students. And I think it's kind of ironic considering that the Spanish, especially here in Andalusia, they're so expressive, they're so passionate. And I just sometimes find it kind of baffling and it frustrates me. And I say to them, be yourself, and I always, there's a famous American comedian, and I can't recall his name now, and he always says, sing from your heart. I can't remember his name. Bill something or other, and he was play from your heart. And I always say the same: be Spanish, but just in English. If you can be, and those guys that walk in and they've got that Andalusian vibe, but they're speaking in English, they really stand out. And in my head now, I've got memories of certain people that came in on exam day from years ago, and I think, oh, he was a real character. His English accuracy wasn't up there, but hey, at B1 level, we're not looking for 100% accuracy. We're looking for, was the message received clearly? Was I able to understand despite the grammatical errors or pronunciation errors? And if the answer is yes, then you've done very well, you know. So there are a couple of little things I think that can help students to build their confidence. This is a little game that I did again. First lesson I did this. So me and you are going to play this game, or attempt to, all right?
Awesome, I can't wait.
Basically, this is called, well, this is a question mark, isn't it? It's made out of, I don't know if you can see, but it's actually made out of what?
Grapes or olives?
No, neither. Yeah, I was going to say, you must be hungry. It is nearly lunchtime, to be fair. It is nearly lunchtime. So basically, I'm going to ask you a question, okay? You're going to answer that question, and then you're going to ask me a question related, but it has to relate in some way to the question that I've asked you. For example,
like follow-up questions.
Yes, but the question is directed at me. So if I ask you, Jesse, what did you do last night? And you say, oh, I stayed at home and watched a film. Then you could ask me, what was the last film that you watched? So the idea is it has to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Yeah. The idea is to keep going. Tennis. Exactly. That's correct. Very good. Very observant. So we'll start. Okay. So Jesse, what did you do last night?
Well, I stayed home and watched a series because I was tired from hanging out with the kids all day.
Oh, okay.
How about you? What do you normally do on Saturdays? Was last night the same?
Very good, because, yes, very good. That you've already picked up the rule of the game is obviously you can't just do an and you. You know, you can't repeat the question. Right. You have to read. Actually, last night...
That's English teacher point of view, because, you know, you hate the ones when they do the absolute minimum.
Oh, yeah, no, I won't allow it. I'll say it's not acceptable. Actually, I went out with some friends for dinner, actually, because you received the message by accident about the meeting place. And then just had a nice relaxing evening at home. What do you do to relax, Jesse?
To relax, I probably watch YouTube. That's probably most of the time I spend relaxing, if I have time to relax. Similar, actually. Yeah. And, it's my turn. So YouTube, what are some of your favorite YouTube channels? We've talked about biographics a little bit.
Biographics. I've been watching, I've got to be honest, I've been watching a lot of MSNBC and CNN recently. I know it's a little bit, but it's
following the Trump stuff.
Oh, the Fox News. I love it. It's like a show. It is like a show. I'm sorry. I shouldn't sort of,
with good guys and bad guys and a story.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, it kind of is, isn't it? So I find that very interesting. Yeah. The news. I watch a lot of news online and listen to a lot of music as well. All kinds of music. Really. So you get the idea. So Jesse, I see you have an instrument there. So you obviously must be into music, and we could go on and so forth. So what's the point of that? Well, number one, it's a great getting to know you game in the first lesson. Another way you can do it is actually have one person as the questioner, let's say, or as you have a group of three, and two people are asking one person a question. So let's imagine that there's me and another person here, and I'd say, Jesse, what did you do last night? You answer. And then the other person has to ask a question related to my question. And it's back and forth, and we are battling each other. And then the person that loses then becomes the guy that sits down and has to answer the questions. So how do you lose?
Or how do you win?
You win by, if you look back on the video, you'll see I started doing a countdown. 4, 3, 2, 1. You have to ask your question once you've finished giving your answer within 5 to 10 seconds, depending on the level, obviously.
Okay. Maybe I missed that because I'm looking at the camera. I try to look at the camera. And
if we were face to face, and when I do it in the class and I do a demo, I'm 5, 4, 3, and you know what students are like when you do a countdown. They're like, no, 1 minute, 1 moment. You know, so it
excellent pro tip. give
Yeah.
countdowns and points.
Countdowns are awesome, and I'm always doing it 5, 4. And you'll notice that kids, adults, teens, they all start to join in. They love joining in when they're not part of it, and someone else is under pressure. They love it. They love the countdown. Sorry, I've lost my train of thought a little bit. So the point of this is that this is, number one, like I say, it's a great introduction. It's a bit more intimate because they're just in pairs and everybody's talking, so they don't feel so intimidated, let's say. But also, it's teaching them to react quickly, respond, ask questions. In the speaking part of the exam, I tell them this after this game. This is what you need to be able to do. You need to be able to think quickly. You need to be able to retrieve information. You need to be able to process it and then give a response. And one of the key things is linking your ideas to those of someone else. When we look at the criteria of marking in the speaking portion of the exam, the highest achievers are those that are able to link their ideas to what their partner has said and then expand upon that idea. And this activity does exactly that. I do it on the first lesson, and then I'll do it periodically throughout. And it's something it builds up. It builds up their cognitive ability to actually be able to process information and then throw out a response, but quickly, because they're under pressure. You know, in an exam situation, an examiner is not going to sit there going, no, that's the last thing they need. That's the very last thing they need.
That's
So
right.
yeah. So what we're doing is we're training them, because I think really my big takeaway from examining is it's not about these little tasks. It's about the cognitive testing that's going on. What are Cambridge actually testing here in this particular task? That is to say, we have 4 parts to the speaking. If it's just testing your ability to speak, why are there 4 parts? Because it's testing different cognitive abilities. That's why we've got descriptive. We're describing pictures. We're talking about something, you know, individually. Then we have the ability to converse with others, and that's where I really find a lot of students fall down in the collaborative tasks, because they're just not asking, they're not engaging with their partner. They're just taking turns, and they're not
Giving
really
a monologue, right?
Yes, and they're not listening to what their partner's saying and responding to it. And it's the thing that I found the most difficult to try and knock out of them. So that's why I use this game now at the beginning of the term, and I keep it going on. And I've seen positive results from it, definitely. Yeah.
I'd imagine. That's fantastic. I'm actually going to use that this week.
Yeah,
And,
you should, absolutely. I highly recommend it, and not in non-exam classes. I mean, just for speaking confidence in general, because students always say to me that I have to think about. No, I want to get to the stage where I don't have to think about it. And I always ask them, have you dreamt in English yet? You know, when you have your first English dream, that will be great. I remember my first Spanish dream, actually. I dreamt in Spanish. That was great. It's a real breakthrough.
That's such a breakthrough, right? And
it
such
is,
an encouragement.
It is, yeah, absolutely. Right, so this one, most people already know, recording yourself. Most people know about this, but I think it bears repeating, because students of all levels, and I'm thinking about my C2 student actually right now. I asked her last year to do a recording for me, and she did the recording. She sent it to me. When I went to class, I told her, "Hey, that was really good. You did a really good job there." And she said to me, she goes, "I have to confess something." And I said, "What? What's the problem?" She said, that was about the 10th attempt I'd had at that recording. She says, "I'm really sorry." "Why are you apologizing? This is fantastic." And I thought, yes. I said, "You don't realize that's exactly what I want." I didn't tell her she had to keep doing it until she got it right. But students do, because they can. So why not let them? If they want to upgrade their work, if they're not happy with it, and I've said to them in the privacy of their own homes that no one else, and they know this, no one else is there to hear you. You don't have to feel embarrassed, but you need to hear yourself. You need to hear yourself. If you don't like the way you sound, do something about it. That being said, I'm going to hate watching this. I'm going to hate watching this back probably, because I don't really like seeing myself talk either. But there you go.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm at the point now, because I've been listening to myself and recording myself and editing myself say the same thing over and over again. Sure. That now, you know, that voice that you hear, your own voice, it's different than the voice other people hear. Yes, now the voice I hear inside my head is the voice that I hear on the video. So for better or worse,
right? Oh, that's cool.
You get used to it. So encouragement to the students in doing this. If you do this enough, you won't have such a shock in listening to your own voice. And this, funny you say this, because on the worksheet I told you about earlier about the daily test, this is actually one of the tests. Record yourself and listen to it. And at first it's brutal. It's so brutal.
It is. Yeah. And I send them off in pairs as well in class, and they will do exam tasks together, collaborative tasks. I'll spread some of them out. Normally in CNA, we've got a lot of space there, so I can take students out and I can put them on a table outside, others in a room. So they're not all together, encroaching on each other's space, and they feel more confident as well. And I'll let them do the task. I'll let them record them in pairs, then listen to it in pairs, and I'll give them, okay, you've got 15 minutes to practice this task, and then when you've finished, or the 15 minutes is up, they will then submit all of the audios to me, and there you go. And then I've got all of their audios, and then I can look at them. But they've had that 15 minutes of practice together. I then allow them to pair up with that same person again, and maybe they'll practice individual tasks at home. They'll record and they'll send it to their speaking partner, because there's a level of confidence there where they've already done some tasks together.
Sorry, do you do this with your adult students or teens as
adults
well?
And adults, teens, I don't necessarily. I have done the sending each other things outside. I did that a few years ago, but I've kind of decided against it because teens are a bit particular about their contacts and things. You know, they're a bit more fussier, I should say. So no, with adults, more.
I can imagine that I'd ask them to record themselves and they'd be like, no, teacher, no.
Oh, no. Oh, no, they do record themselves. Oh, no, that I do. Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah, that I do. Yeah, they do that. Because, again, it's set up in the same way where they're not in the actual classroom. Most of them, they're in different places, and they're together. And, in fact, they're not having to stand up in front of the class. I'm not making them perform. I do later on in the year. Everyone has to stand up and be counted because I want them to feel that pressure and to get over it. But no. The teenagers absolutely record themselves in class. Yeah.
Is that a struggle at first then to get them to do it?
Nobody really likes doing it, but I mean, I just tell them, look, you guys are recording. This is just for you. It's not going anywhere. No one else is going to hear this, not even your classmates. So it's not that difficult to convince them, because it's not like they have to stand up in front of everybody. It's really them, and there might be another pair in the room or another two pairs, but they're busy doing their thing. And I think you'll find when given 15, 20 minutes, it's like, oh, okay, well, it doesn't, all right, we might not be perfect, but we can just do it again.
So you give them like 15, you give them enough time to let it breathe.
Oh, yes.
Let them,
yes, yeah. That obviously gets reduced as time goes on. I might say, okay, now you've got, 3 or 4 months into the course, you've now got 10 minutes to do this task. And then the last, towards the end, you've got 5 minutes.
Okay, that's let me bring that up as a very great tip that I could have used earlier on in my career, because I came from a world of like construction, and the more work you do, the more output you do, that means that you're doing a better job. So I kind of took that mentality to teaching, and my classes were just so jam-packed of me, to me, if I wasn't continually doing something, then I wasn't doing a good job, right? But like, let your activities breathe,
Yes.
some dead time isn't necessarily dead time. If you're getting your students to do a beneficial activity or like this, give them 15, 20 minutes to record themselves. That's great. That's something that earlier in my career, Jesse, would have never thought about. So that's a great tip for younger teachers.
You're also able to monitor them quite readily. You can go around to each group and you can offer some nice individual help to them and assistance. And I find I'll just be quietly to one side listening. Thumbs up, lots of encouragement. Always, I'm like, yeah. This is good. Like just let them while they're recording, so that they don't feel intimidated. Then at the end, I'll offer a couple of nuggets of truth nuggets, I should say, and just sort of say, I thought that was great. You always start with something positive, obviously, and there's always something positive. The very fact that they're trying is positive. That for me is the most I will ever ask of any student. Are you trying? Are you really trying? If you're trying, you're perfect for me. And then you offer them some information, and then I tell you what, why don't you try doing this? Why not that? And then let them get on with it. again, and I think they like that as well, because they feel that they're getting some personal attention. And hey, look, as teachers, we cannot have people individually. We haven't got time to have one person or two people, and then the next two, and then the next two. We haven't got time. What are the others doing meanwhile? What are the others doing? You know, it doesn't make any sense. And I think as a teacher, then I can go around and I have my notebook. My notebook, this is, yeah, you know, every teacher, you must have a notebook. I mean, I do come across some teachers who don't have notebooks, who don't really write anything down ever. If you're a new teacher, you absolutely have to have one. It's like, it's just get you into rhythms, you know what I mean? Get
It
you
has
into patterns and stuff.
to mark down corrections, mark down their mistakes, mark down notes that you want to, like, you go down around to different groups and you say, oh, I need to talk about like to be, you know, like I am agree. I have to address that.
I am agree. Oh, I love that. Yes. As an examiner, that's one of my favorites. I am agree. Yes. Yeah. That's a great one. Yeah. I'm in agree. And I have however many years.
Yeah.
So I have 25 years. It's nice. These, and you get to notice these repeated mistakes. So then
mark those down in your notebook.
Exactly. So then there are things that are beneficial to the whole class, and those are the things you can pick up on going around, those common mistakes while they're recording. And then you can offer your individual bit.
Very nice.
When they all come back together again, I talk in a general scope, the things that were good. In each pair, I try to find something that they did very well. So, and you know, encouragement really is key, because this, you know, as any student knows, these exams are tough. As any teacher knows who's done the CELTA or any teaching qualification, you know, remember what that experience is like. That's what our students are going through when we walk into that classroom, you know?
Yeah. A lot of pressure, and encouragement goes a long way.
Absolutely. I respond very well to encouragement, you know, so why would others not be the same?
I have a video where I talked about encouragement. It's like, and think about yourselves. Like, imagine if you're losing weight, you're dieting, you're going to the gym, like what works better? Like, wow, you look really good. Like, are you doing something different? Or like, look at you, fatty. Why don't you lose some weight?
I didn't expect that. That kind of came out of nowhere. I didn't expect that, but okay.
You know, I mean, maybe that's that East Coast kind of love that they show, but
okay.
But
I'm sensing some past trauma or something going on there, but let's save that for another separate podcast for a different channel, I think.
That's for my therapy, my therapist. Yeah. No, but you know what I mean? Encouragement. Anyway, that's a great tip, and I love that recording yourself.
Yeah, recording is awesome and essential. Yeah. So moving on to writing, which again is something that people often struggle with. You know, that it's the classic I don't know what to write, particularly in B1 where they have to write a story, which again, you know, the first thing I'm going to say is, you know, stories, everything is plagiarized. I'm going to get to this in a minute. You know, really, if you think about it, I mean, if you want to look at it in a certain way, everything comes from somewhere. You know, very few things, if anything, is truly, truly original. Music, films, and the more I'm discovering, especially YouTube, I'm discovering that this film is actually just the story of this. Oh yeah, just the story of that, and it's based on the story of various other things. So
you copy from one person, it's plagiarism. You copy from many people, it's called research.
That's I like that. Yeah, that's a lovely way to put it, actually. So one of the things that I always suggest is to, this one. Yeah, I don't know if you can see this image here. Mm-hmm. This was quite a famous image from a few years ago in China. They were so determined to stop cheating, copying in exams, that the students actually had to wear,
kind of like horse blinders.
Yeah, you know? Essentially, yeah, blinkers, blinders, yeah. But I want my students to copy, surprisingly. Now, I don't want them copying in the actual exam, but when it comes to writing, absolutely, I want them to copy.
Can you explore that a little further? What do you mean?
Yes, I absolutely can. Yes, I can. So a typical activity I will give my students is I give them I give them a Cambridge writing task. And then I gave them 2 examples, which you can find in the handbooks. You can find them in the course books. I mean, they're everywhere. So you find sample answers, the Cambridge website, which I will talk about in a little while. has lots of example papers on there. So let's say we're doing a B1 and we're writing the story, writing part 2. So I will show them the story task. I'll give them 2 stories that have been written. And then the students will basically have to look at those stories and decide which one is better. Okay. And they'll read them and they'll decide why. The question is like, well, I don't want you to tell me that that's better, but why is it better? The power of why. That's another tip as well, actually, off the cuff. Right. Why for absolutely everything. In your writing, why. When you give an answer to a question, why. Always say why. If you can't think of something to say, have you explained why you came up with your answer? So yes, it's all about basically the students taking these 2 ideas, deciding which one is better and why, and then looking at language. And I will say to them, okay, there is some interesting language that you can use for your story there. And actually a better example might actually even be the letter, writing a letter. Dear so-and-so, I happily received your letter regarding blah, 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 blah. And I'll underline that. I happily received your letter regarding, and I'll say to them, is this a good bit of English? Could you use this in your letter? And they, yeah, I could, yeah, because it's not anything specific, but it's something that would suit the register of the letter that you need to write, yeah? And then I'll get them to go through and find other language that they could use and adapt for their own letter. And then I say, take that home with you. Take it home with you, copy, all right? Use this as your template. And depending on the level, you can let them freeform. With the C1 students, for example, I have a write a review, and I often do it with review. And I'll give them my review. I always do examples as well. That's another thing as well. As a teacher, I do think you should do an example. I have an example of everything. I don't ever make them do something that I wouldn't do myself or that I haven't done. So I love the book and the film, Ready Player One. I love the book and the film. And so I've written a big review about that. I've given it to my students and I've put all the target language in there. And after you've given them a few examples, this film is set in. It's based on little things like that, little phrasal verbs. These are conventions of the genre, because this is all about genre writing. That's what this is. A review is different from an article, is different from a report, is different from a story. And so what we're doing is we're giving them examples and we're allowing them to extrapolate the language from those examples and use it in their own work, because that's what we want from them. So copying, far from being a negative thing, is a good thing, because, I mean, at the end of the day, we want them to use this language. And when it comes to writing, we need phrases. There are a lot of fixed phrases I found with genre writing, with what Cambridge is asking of us. It's very conventional. And the Delta really touches on that a lot. You learn a lot about genre, and I found that to be very interesting. Actually, genre writing is really super interesting. Essays, I know you did a video on essay writing.
I did. Wow.
Yeah, I saw you did a video on that. And essays as well. Again, as you well know, there's standard form, there's standard languages. Formula. Yeah, and you get them like, why is this good? Oh, it has 4 paragraphs. Exactly. So how many paragraphs are you going to have? 6? No, I'm going to have 4. It's copy.
It's not the time to get creative.
No,
not in this time. You know, it's the same as everything. There's a time for creativity. There's a time for, to explore adjectives, but maybe a report isn't it, or an essay.
No, exactly. Right? I mean, it's not. Yeah. All right, and another simple activity. Again, I don't know how well you can see this. Is just basically, I call it upgrade. So we've got the classic sentence: "The cat sat on the mat." Okay, that's fine, and I write that on the board, and I say to students, is this a good sentence? And they say yes, because for them, grammatically, it's a great sentence. And I will say to them, yeah, it's a good sentence. Is it a great sentence? And then they kind of look confused. They don't know what I mean by that. And then I say to them, well, what I mean is, could we make this sentence better? How could we make it better? And sometimes they know, sometimes they don't. And I will suggest to them, well, could we drop an adjective in there? Could we put any adjectives in there to pep it up a little bit? So what can we describe in this? It's the cat. Okay, so what kind of cat? And then it starts generating. So I'll ask them then, okay, can you put 2 adjectives in there? So here we've got the beautiful the beautiful fluffy Siberian I've got in here now. So I've added some adjectives. I will get the students on mini whiteboards to actually come up with their own versions of my sentence,
Awesome.
but they add their own adjectives in. Then I go back and I say, okay, we use adverbs. Why do we use adverbs? We use adverbs to describe actions, to describe verbs. Where's the verb in the sentence? Boom. Can we put some adverbs in there? Could we do that? Oh, yes, we could. What adverbs could we put in there? It's up to you. Let's see what you can come up with. The crazier, the better. And I do encourage craziness because, especially with teens, they love a bit of crazy. You know?
Oh yeah, they almost get into like a competition of who can come up with the craziest thing.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I encourage. I encourage with teenagers, the crazier, the better. You know, because it's fun. We have a good laugh with it, and you need to with these exams. You need to find any moment you can to smile and laugh, right? So I will then ask them, okay, could we substitute any words? Could we find any synonymous words? Like for cat, it's another word for cat, because one of the things in writing in Cambridge we have to try to avoid is over repetition, right? So after all said and done, they'll come out with their sentences, and then I'll show my sentence, and I'll say, okay, this is a sentence I've got. So I've gone from the cat sat on the mat to the beautiful, fluffy Siberian feline perched herself majestically upon the withered old mat. Now, I wouldn't expect a B1 or B2, even a B2 student, but C1, C2, possibly, yeah. Well, absolutely, yes. For those levels, yeah. This is an extreme example, and I'll say that, and the kids, but I use that example with B1 or even A2 students. And they're like, you know, they're kind of like, but they still find it funny because it's so overly complicated. But then they come up with things. We then
encourage use of their phones too, and technology. Like look up new words in a word reference
I have to be honest. I haven't done that with this because I want them to take their rough draft of writing, because this is basically they write a rough draft of their writing. Then we'll do this activity, and then I will send them back to their rough draft, and I'll say, now upgrade what you've done based on
the art of proofreading, which is an important skill to
they'll go through it, and I will say to them, I promise you will be able to make that better. And I'm telling you, the difference is really quite something. I've noticed massive differences because students do not edit their work very often. There are very few students. I walk around those exams, I see the amount of students that don't do first drafts, that don't really go through or edit, and there are some very few that are able to write very effectively, quickly and concisely, but those are people who really have put the time and effort in, and of course are naturally gifted, as some are. But you can always upgrade, you can always do better, and I always say, have you really done the best you think? And this is just a simple thing. You go look at that writing and ask yourself, can I drop some adjectives in here? Can I drop some adverbs in here to describe things? And I find it really, really works. Can I substitute words as well? Because the repetition is a problem in Cambridge, yeah. To expand upon that, you can also throw in linkers. Can I link things together? How can I link? And it can get as big as it need be, depending on the level. But they will always upgrade. Allow them to swap rough drafts. That's another way I do it. And say, okay, who can upgrade the most? You know, who can upgrade their partner's text the best? And I will be the judge. And again, I make it competitive. You know, and sometimes they get really, you know, they can go a bit over the top, and I have to rein them in a little bit. But you know, which
is a better problem to have.
Exactly, because it proves that they're invested in it, and then again, we're getting that idea embedded in their heads. So come exam day, I know how I can make this better. So I found that to be quite an effective way of just a very quick way to upgrade their writing.
It's all habit forming, right?
Exactly, and that's what I'm all about. I'm all about getting their brain used to these certain patterns. It's like me having to get used to getting up every day to do morning intensives now, which has started. You know, this is my first full week coming up. So, you know, back at CNA, and I'm in the morning and the evening. So I'm kind of like, okay, that's why I've been taking it easy. Yesterday, I thought today is a good day to do this. So I'm getting my head into that. And I'm getting into my routine again, you know, and it's really important it's not always easy, but it gets easier. You know, and then it becomes second nature, right?
I love that sentence. It's not always easy, but it gets easier.
Yeah, and then it becomes second nature, you know?
Yeah, like dieting.
Okay. I wouldn't know about that, but yeah, it's something I have to worry about. Okay, the final thing to do with writing, again, I don't know how well you can see, self-correction writing code.
Okay.
Writing code. I do not correct my students' work.
Okay.
I do not correct my students' work. If there is a mistake on their work at the beginning of the year, and I'm going to be doing this coming week, they are given a code. And basically, if I see an erroneous sentence, an entire phrase, for example, I circle. Any mistake, any error, I circle. And then next to the circle will be a letter, which will correspond to something. For example, SP, what do you think if you see the letters SP around a word? What do you think?
Spelling.
Yeah, and I elicit straight away from them as they're putting it into their books. I'm doing it on the board. I'll draw a circle. SP. What do you think the problem is here? Spelling. F is for form, and I've got a list of about 15 different letters and symbols. They have them in their books. It makes marking so much easier and quicker. Because again, if I'm trying to teach them, I really see very little value in me just correcting a mistake. It's very time consuming on the part of us as teachers. And I just feel that I'm not really sure. Is this a mistake? Is this something they genuinely didn't understand? Or is it a case of they weren't careful? And I promise you, use the code, give the writing back to them, and then I give them time in class. I give them time to sit down, look at their work. And I'm telling you, every single student always is able to self-correct to a greater or lesser degree.
Sure, right.
And it proves my point. And you kind of hold your hands up and you say, there you go. You know, this is why. Check, double check. Yeah. You know, these mistakes are there. And again, I allow peer correction. That depends on how confident, because I don't think it's nice to necessarily give somebody's writing to someone else to check. I know that even now, I wouldn't necessarily like that. I'd be a little bit about that.
And I've found the students kind of are, depending on how much you do that, they kind of feel awkward correcting others.
Exactly.
Like, who am I to tell this person,
exactly.
that they're wrong?
Yeah. But you can do it if, it really does depend on the dynamic of the class. But I don't
and with the right guidance,
Oh, absolutely.
Give the right, guidelines.
Yeah. And again, it's an easy, it saves time for everybody. And again, it just makes it more autonomous. It puts the onus on them, and it gets them, like you said before, about habit forming. It does do that. It is habit forming, because then it's like, okay, I need to do this. And I keep reminding them, and I'll do it again. And I'll say, look, again, I want to get to the stage where I see mistakes, but you're not able to correct them to a certain extent. But they're always there, and they're always able to correct, always. And I have to help them out with some. But like I say, every single student, honestly, every single student always goes, and then they're like, and it's nice for them, because then they see those common mistakes, those repeated. Punctuation is a big one, where people, punctuate incorrectly, and then they see it and say, okay, right, yeah. So you can see, and I'll ask them, what do you think is your issue here? What do you think is your greatest weakness here? Or what could you improve? What do you think you need to improve the most? That's the right phrasing there. And it's nice. Again, they are telling you. I'm not telling them that's not correct. This is how you do it. That's not correct. This is how you do it. They don't want to hear that. I think it's a lot more rewarding for them to actually find it for themselves and tell you. And I think it's less embarrassing for them as well, isn't it? Rather than me telling them this is terrible, loads of red pen everywhere. No. That's not encouraging. It doesn't build confidence in a lesson that is very, very difficult and intimidating for students as it is. These Cambridge courses are the ones that are, they're not so fun, really. There are a lot of lessons where it's just head down, let's practice.
And that's because a lot of the times if you correct them, because I've kind of learned this too, that I don't actually make the corrections, because then it turns into they see it. Oh yeah, I knew that. Okay.
Exactly.
And then they put it in their folder or whatever.
No retention. It's all about retention, and keeping things in that head, and keep using and reusing and using and activating that part of their brain. So like, again, you said it's habit forming. We want to get them into these habits, and you need to be doing this at the beginning of the year as well. I feel it's something that we do at the beginning of the year, so they know what's going on straight away. I give them that code. I need to
grab that from you, and I need to make my own, because
you can make your own.
I do kind of like have these codes that I do, like if I squiggle, underline something, or I'll circle it and write SP, for example. And I kind of I don't know why I haven't thought of giving them a code before, because I'm like, oh yeah, they should know this. Why should they know that? I don't know.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
And
it's
also
my
something
code.
else, something just to add on to that, is if I highlight something, a mistake, let's say it's someone who's not using capital letters on proper nouns or something, let's say. And I will circle it and I'll put G or something. Let's say somebody's using the present perfect. I think that's a better example. I have went to the park, and I'll circle it and I'll put G next to it.
For
And then
grammar.
and I'll see that same mistake again. And then I'll see it again. What I'll do is the second time, it might be a different verb. I have ate pizza. And I'll circle it again and again, but this time I won't put a letter. I won't put any, because I want them to see.
If it's in the same writing, or even if it's
Oh,
in
yeah,
different.
yeah. No.
Yeah.
If it's in the same writing, no, it has to be within the same writing. Otherwise, that could be too puzzling.
Yeah.
That being said, in the higher levels, you can start to get a little bit more. Come on, you should. When you know your students, I'll be like, come on, Concha, I know that.
Like the he, she.
I'll just circle it and then just leave it and see what they can come up with. Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of times they will catch their own, because it is just careless mistakes. One thing I do with my one-on-one students too is, if they do a writing, I'll have them read a paragraph to themselves before I read it or before they read it to me. And I'm like, you just read it to yourself, because now that I'm present, you have a different state of mind, and you catch right now any of your mistakes.
Yeah,
before
exactly.
we read it together.
Yeah. And like I say, it's more rewarding for them. I mean, the students, it's positive, a very positive experience for them, because they realise. And I praise them for telling me their mistakes. That's something that is really praiseworthy. I mean, as humans, I think noticing our flaws and the things that we can improve is one of the greatest attributes we can have as humans. I think is being able and the ability to actually do that.
Absolutely. Like you said earlier, like even to grow as a person, not only as a student or in language, but in your own personal growth.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to move to listening. Just
Perfect.
This little statistic here is that a study showed that 60% of our time is spent listening, but the retention of that only 25%. Of the actual information that we truly retain. I mean, we sit there, we listen to each other, but only some of it goes in. And in the case of Cambridge exams, quite often we're not listening to our partner. We're sat there petrified, waiting for our turn to speak. It goes back to what we were saying before about turn taking and people sitting there just literally taking turns because they're so petrified, waiting to take their turn.
Yeah, thinking the whole time while your mouth is moving what I'm going to say.
Exactly.
Like
Yeah. And then that's when we fall into the trap of not being able to respond to our partner and build on what they've said. And then we're not going to achieve the high mark that we really want, because we haven't completed the task. We haven't used our cognitive ability to complete the task and to show that we're able to communicate and actually come to some sort of conclusion, which is what those collaborative tasks are about. But listening as a whole is something that students, as you well know, it makes them groan. You say, okay, listening, and they, it's not a nice thing. It's something that as a teacher, I haven't enjoyed spending lots of time preparing it. To be honest, it's been frustrating at times, really frustrating, trying to prepare listenings and get things kind of, just to get things done.
You're so unauthentic.
And make it fun.
Inauthentic.
Yes. I think so. I do feel so. And I still feel we've got a long way to go when it comes to representation of dialect and accent with listenings.
I was just going to mention that you have these listening tests with these fake, dialects.
I thought, yes.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry, because the American ones from Cambridge, and I apologize on behalf of my country, because some of them are truly awful. There's legendary.
Like exaggerated, like I remember one this exaggerated
absolutely.
New York kind of accent. And then I looked out the window.
Yeah. And said, hey, I'm walking here. But it kind of puzzles me actually why we don't have, and it kind of goes back to what I was saying before about when students go to visit London, for example, and then they then feel very deflated by the experience, because they feel, oh, hang on, my English isn't so good. So
which it is probably, it is. It's just kind of like they've been like repetition, but they've been practicing the wrong way. I've talked about before, practice does not make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. You could practice practice the wrong thing, then you'll just get really good at the wrong thing.
Exactly, precisely, yes. That's why it comes down to exposure, really, doesn't it? I mean, you need to, and as I've said to my students this week, really, if you want to make listening easier, you have to expose yourself to it. With the same vein that we talked about Hola magazine, read hello, it's the same idea. We all teachers, we know this. Watch things that you like in English, but again, something that you actually enjoy. A lot of people, I'm quite surprised that a lot of my Spanish students particularly have films that they love and they've watched again and again and again, but they've never actually watched the original version of them, which I found quite strange actually, because when I really like sort of films, or in general, I try to watch the original version of films, especially if I particularly like an actor. I'll want to, I want to see their true performance.
Hear their voice.
So I often tell my students, would you like to see that performer, watch a film that you've seen 100 times because you already know the story.
Or a series. Like I say that about The Simpsons. I do that for myself with The Simpsons because I know The Simpsons so well.
I was just about to say, last night we came home, we actually watched an episode of The Simpsons, and I said to my partner, well, we can watch it in Spanish. I love this episode. We can watch it in Spanish. I've seen it 100 times. And it was interesting for me. And I'm learning, I'm just noticing things, just generally, because I know that word for word. And it's interesting to hear the Spanish version of it,
Yeah.
So that's obviously the first thing. We all know that. There's also this, which I'm pretty sure you know what this is in the background, what this refers to with listening exercises. So life would be perfect if we had these. Can you tell me, Jesse, I'm going to do a little bit of elicitation there. Why have I got this up here with regards to TEFL teaching in the classroom, listening?
Well, I would think that it's because, kind of like I have in real life, I'm so accustomed to having that rewind button, or also to go with it, like a zoom button when I'm looking at like a photograph. Sometimes I just instinctually want to zoom in, and the same thing, like if I didn't catch something, I want to go back and listen.
Sure.
And I'm wondering if this is about to encourage students to listen to the big picture and not get discouraged if they miss a word.
Yes, but over a long period of time, basically. This I liken to you've got some kids, are they? I don't know how old they are. Do they ride a bike yet, any of them?
Yeah, we just went out yesterday. One with training wheels, but yeah, we just went out yesterday.
There you go. Bingo. This is the analogy I'd like to use. Yeah, it's the whole training wheels thing. So the idea behind this, and I learned this actually in the CELTA. This was Claire Potter gave me this great idea. Thanks, Claire. You see this? And this is the tape player, so I let them have control of the listening. So they're basically, if anyone wants to pause, rewind, go back, play that section again. They basically have control, so they can listen 5 times. They can listen 5 times at the moment.
Yeah.
At the moment. What basically happens is the functionality of my tape player.
So wait, time out real quick before. So you choose one student to have control at a time, or do you give them
anybody, because it's always going to be the less confident student who's going to say pause or rewind.
So you play it, they can just like verbally give you the instructions.
They just put their hand up. Yeah, it's just a hand up, pause. Okay, no problem, pause.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I find something interesting I've noticed is I find that students tend to put their hand up at similar times, which is quite an interesting observation. If you try it, you'll notice that students, there will be certain sentences or something that's said, and then I notice collectively, oh, that was difficult. Very interesting for me as a teacher, because I can see, okay, why? I start going into the why was that difficult. 9 times out of 10, it's related to connected speech, which is something else that I really highly recommend for. I haven't put that on this slide, but connected speech, the Delta deals with that a lot. And I think that is really, really interesting. Really helps students understand these intrusive letters, sounds that appear between words that don't really, that aren't really there. Tokyo and Japan. It's my classic sentence. Tokyo and What. There's a Tokyo, what. Where's that come from? This W, there's no W there, but there is the sound of it. Yeah, so that's a separate thing that I really encourage people to invest the time in looking into. Intrusives.
That's very good. I do that with my students too. I don't use the phonemic script because I kind of think that's like an extra kind of language that some students to put on their plate. But I do my best to blend sounds together and write words how they actually sound. And especially with like words that end in ED and the next word starts with a vowel sound. So like summed up. It's like the word dup. What is dup?
Yeah.
Well, nothing.
Exactly.
But the sound, summed up, that's how I would write it.
Yeah, because that's where the difficulty comes in, because their brains are kind of, because they have a language that actually makes sense, unlike English. I often tell my students, crazy English, and embrace it. Tell them, it's not you. It's not all you. You are right. Our language is nuts, and it's because they're expecting that hard consonant sound before that's their marker that it's a new word. Yeah. In many cases, if it doesn't have an E in front of it, for example. The same way as when a Spanish speaker, for example, tries to say many words, especially lower level, tries to say something in English that begins with S, they automatically put an E on the beginning of it. I'm a student in the school. And it's going to be very difficult. It's because it's literally ingrained. The neurons are firing off, and that's, again, it comes back to that same thing. We're trying to train them to think English, basically, and not to think so much in Spanish when it comes to construction. So getting back to this, the idea behind this is that basically I slowly remove functionality. Like, so the next time we do it, I'll say, okay, there is no pause this time. You can rewind and listen to the whole thing again, but there is no pause. Okay? And then we'll go on like that for a few sessions. And then when I do it again, maybe 6 months down the line, okay, there's a pause, but there's no going back. There's no listen again. Okay?
Give different restrictions over time.
Yes. And then slowly but surely you're removing everything to eventually you take off those training wheels and let them go. And it's just something you can use with any listening. And if they're having trouble, bring back the controls again. But there has to come a point where they don't have them. And I would say when it gets to halfway through the academic year, I would really stop using that. Because I don't want them. It will become a crutch otherwise.
I was just going to use that word.
Yeah. So it's something that I will do for the first 4 months of the year. But then after that, no, I wouldn't do it. But it helps them feel like they've got control, because this really is, unlike speaking and writing, they have no control. They have zero control. And I think that's the most terrifying part for them, is that they have absolutely no control over the listening. So give them some control and then slowly take it away.
Nice. And I love what you said. You said it a few times in this, and I'd like to just highlight it. Again, giving time to breathe. And this is in like over a few months, 3 or 4 months. Yes. You've talked about do this over 3 or 4 months. Let them have it. It's not just like 1 or 2 lessons, and now you should have it. No. Now you've got it, so now I expect you to produce it. No, like give them time.
Absolutely. Right. Yeah, sure.
My kids are going crazy out there. You hear?
Oh, that's okay. Again, this is listening here. As we've said before about personalizing it, I love friends. So I found this website, eslvideo.com, is amazing. It's really, really good. And it's I did this one in class, this video, but apart from, it's the only time I use it, and I often set it for homework for students to go home and do it. Because like Friends, for example, is something that's really popular around the world. My multilingual students I teach in the summer, I've used it with them because they all know Friends as well. And it's a fairly harmless, universal show that pretty much everyone can watch and enjoy. Yeah. But there are lots of other programs. It's very pop culture-y, this website. And it's great because it's got tasks that are very similar to Cambridge tasks. But it's not a Cambridge task. It's, it's like, watch this. And I will set it up by just playing the video first. I won't even show them that it's the website. This would be full screen. I play the video, say, let's watch an episode. Have you seen this program? I love Friends. Put the episode on, the clip. And then we'll start talking about Friends, the lead-in. And then I'll ask them a question, a multiple choice question. Okay, we're going to play a game. Okay. And then I might play the video again, depending on the level. And then I'll ask them the first question. And then I'll expand it out and say, okay, this is what this is really is. I want you to do this for homework. And they'll be like, oh, because they enjoyed it, and they didn't see it as an exam task, when essentially it's the same thing. They're listening and they're answering questions.
It is the same thing. That's a great resource.
Yeah, but because it's not a boring piece of paper sat down, and they have to sit down, eyes down, and just writing and just listening, and it's something that they're not particularly interested in or whatever, and they're just thinking, am I going to pass or not? But we're going to touch on that a little bit, because like I say, it's a lot of this exam stuff is the psychology of it. It really is. It's the state of mind that you go into this course with as a teacher and as a student.
Absolutely.
So,
and that's why I named the show More Than English, because that's what we're doing. You know, it's more than English, like that. I love
Absolutely.
that. It's the psychology of it. It's the giving them confidence that they can do this. And it's not really as hard as they think it is in their minds.
No. And especially again, when they, if I refer back to students, you know, seeing their own mistakes and stuff. And it's like, you know, you're better than you realize if you give yourself a chance.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hey guys, I'm sitting here with my daughter, Sophia. She's recording this, and I just want to thank you for watching this video. If you like it and you want to see another video like it, then right next to me, you can click another video for a fun lesson idea or a teaching tip. And don't forget to subscribe and click the bell so you get new videos every week.